send you to sleep like the others will.
11 p.m, 7 nights a week. Join us.
Hello there, I'm Eamon Holmes.
And I'm Isabel Webster.
And we hope you can join us for
Breakfast with Eamon.
And Isabel.
You make me laugh out loud, belly laugh.
Is that important first thing in the morning?
Yeah, absolutely.
And there's me trying to be deadly serious. News is a serious business.
Yeah, I have to rein you in sometimes.
Well, it doesn't stop us laughing at it. It doesn't stop us having an opinion on what's going on.
Yeah.
And it certainly will not stop us reflecting what you think.
Weekdays from 6 to 9:30 on GB News.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
Digital radio. I'm Nana Akua, and for the next 2 hours, me and my panel will be taking on some of the big headlines right now. Now, this show is all about opinion. It's mine, it's theirs, and of course, it's yours. We'll be debating, discussing it at times. We will disagree, but no one will be cancelled. So joining me today, it's comedian Leo Kearse and Conservative commentator Calvin Robinson. Before we get started, let's get your latest news headlines.
Good afternoon. It's 4 o'clock. I'm Tamsin Roberts in the GB newsroom. A former minister has become the latest MP to submit a letter of no confidence in Boris Johnson. Nick Gibb, who was schools minister last year, has joined a number of fellow Conservatives calling on the Prime Minister to resign after allegations of lockdown parties at Downing Street. Writing in the Daily Telegraph this morning, Mr Gibb says his constituents are furious about the double standards. It's reported up to 17 MPs have now submitted letters, but a total of 54 are needed to trigger a vote of no confidence. Conservative MP for Thirsk and Malton, Kevin Hollinrake, told GB News the Prime Minister is still popular.
There's a lot of support for Boris Johnson out there. I mean, it's different in Westminster and it's different in the media, of course. I do not think we should have a Prime Minister removed from office in this country because of a media lynch mob. I think we need to go through this process properly. I think we need to see the results of the inquiry and the investigations and make a proper decision from there.
Boris Johnson has spoken with the French president over the tensions on the Ukraine border. Downing Street say the Prime Minister and Emmanuel Macron both agreed a diplomatic solution to the current tensions must remain the overriding priority. The French leader will visit Moscow next week to hold discussions with the Russian President Vladimir Putin. The planned visit comes as China backed the Kremlin's demand that NATO doesn't allow Ukraine to join the military alliance. Social media firms will now be forced to actively remove illegal content without waiting for it to be reported by users. Under the Online Safety Bill, companies are required to remove a range of illegal material, but now several new criminal offences are being added, including revenge porn. Culture Secretary Nadine Dorries says the government hopes the bill will bring the full weight of the law against those who use the internet as a weapon to ruin people's lives. In the US, the former Vice President Mike Pence says he could not have changed the results of the 2020 presidential election. It follows renewed claims by Donald Trump that Mr Pence could have overturned the Democrats' victory. During a speech in Florida, Mr Pence directly challenged Trump's assertion that he should be investigated for failing to prevent Joe Biden taking office.
President Trump is wrong. I had no right to overturn the election. The presidency belongs to the American people and the American people alone. And frankly, there is no idea more un-American than the notion that any one person could choose the American president.
Meanwhile, the US military says an airport attack in Afghanistan that left 13 American troops and 170 Afghans dead could not have been prevented. The blast happened in the capital, Kabul, last August as US troops were helping with evacuations in the aftermath of the Taliban's takeover. It was believed to be a complex attack involving an ISIS-K gunman, but the inquiry showed there was only a single bomber.
Based on our investigation at the tactical level, this was not preventable. and the leaders on the ground followed the proper measures. And anytime there was an imminent threat warning, they followed the proper procedures.
Back in the UK now, and police in Birmingham have issued an appeal after an urn containing a child's ashes was stolen during a break-in. The urn, which police say is of little monetary value, was taken on Friday in the Garrett's Green area of the city. Officers say the ashes belonged to the homeowner's first child, who was stillborn almost 10 years ago. The government has launched a public competition to find the new home of the railways. The winning town or city, which has to be outside London, will house the new Great British Railways headquarters. Transport Secretary Grant Shapps says it should be somewhere well connected with a great railway history. The winner will be announced this summer. The Queen has hosted a reception in Sandringham for members of the local community as part of celebrations to mark her record-breaking Platinum Jubilee. The 95-year-old monarch welcomed guests, including former cookery school student Angela Wood, who helped invent the famous dish Coronation Chicken. It was served to guests after the Queen's coronation in 1953. This is GB News. We'll bring you more news as it happens. Now, though, let's return to Nana.
So good afternoon. It's just fast approaching 6 minutes after 4 o'clock. This is GB News. I'm Nana Akua. You're watching us live on TV or listening on digital radio or even online. So, you know the feeling at the end of a relationship when whatever you do, no matter how well-intended, humorous or polite you are, the other person literally looks for offence. Well, this is where we are, sadly, with Boris. He became the Prime Minister with a stonking 80-seat majority. He got Brexit done, which was a huge mission. Then the pandemic struck. He put together a first-class vaccine rollout, and in between all of that, he got married, caught COVID, nearly died, and had a few more kids. There's been a few so-called scandals. We've had Wallpaper Gate, Animal Gate, Never-Ending Party Gate. It's been, what, 2 years? He must be exhausted. And behind these scandals, Carrie Johnson's name keeps popping up. There seems to be a contingent who want to level blame in her direction. But I dare any man to reprimand his wife for attempting to ambush him with cake. You're a braver man than many. So now he's on the ropes like Rocky Balboa, and everyone's chucking their hat in the ring. The blows are coming from all directions. So if not Boris, who? Well, top contender for the leading role is Rishi Sunak, who's apparently married to a billionaire and accepted that some people will slip through the gaps during the pandemic. Yes, some 3 million people, actually, most of them self-employed, the very lifeblood of the economy. They got little or no support, and their lives, especially in relation to their credit ratings, have been destroyed. The other day, he put together, in my eyes, a naive policy to assist people with the cost of living. The only thing was, it doesn't appear to assist people with the cost of living. No surprises there. I mean, remember the universal credit uplift. Then there's Foreign Secretary Liz Truss, in Liz We Trust, who doesn't appear to be any good at geography. She boasted that the UK would supply our Baltic allies across the Black Sea. Unfortunately for her, Ukraine is not considered part of the Baltics, as the Baltic Sea is not on its border. She's also apparently secured numerous Brexit deals with which many argue leave us worse off. But at least she's doing stuff. Sadly, I can't tell you much more about her than that. There's Michael Gove, who's currently dealing with the cladding crisis, which clearly should not fall to the leaseholders to pay. But you or I could have told the government that in any case. He came out of the woodwork to betray Boris in the earlier days, but he seems to have mellowed a bit. And there's Tom Tugendhat, who actually has a hat to throw in the ring, although until he did that memorable speech in the Commons, nobody had really ever heard of him. He also got involved with the conversation with Pen Farthing and Animalgate, where Tom didn't appear to get his facts straight when he inferred that the animals were being prioritised over humans. Despite calling the Prime Minister to apologise for his mistakes, Tom, to my knowledge, still hasn't. No takers for any of those? You see, the problem is, none of them appear to possess the charisma that is required for leadership, and this is important. This intangible quality becomes infinitely more obvious when charisma bypass Keir Starmer is mentioned. There's no point disposing of a leader on mostly grounds of his moral conduct when little is known about the others. And to have a leadership challenge now feels uncomfortably like ego. What is clear is that the person at the top is not always the one in control, and that an intricate network of civil servants have been running the show for years. Whilst I agree Prime Ministers should lead by example, we've been through unprecedented times, and I believe Boris was the right person to take us through them. Has he had a fair crack at the whip? And how many Prime Ministers can claim to have done so much in such a short space of time? So I ask again, if not Boris, who? So before we get stuck into the debate, here's what else is coming up today. In my difficult conversation this week, it's thought around about 1 in 500 people are affected by Parkinson's disease. It's a condition which affects the brain and becomes worse over the years, impacting functionality of movement. I'll be speaking to Charlie Appleyard, who was diagnosed with Parkinson's at age of just 39. A keen sportsman, he realised the connection between physical exercise and the benefits in slowing down the disease. He's founded Sports Parkinson's and has gone on to support thousands of people who have the condition. He'll join me at 5 o'clock. The Great British Debate this hour, I'm asking, should we re-nationalise the energy sector? Energy bills are set to skyrocket by almost £700 per household from April. And Chancellor Rishi Sunak has offered a £200 support package to families paid back over 5 years. There's also some reports of inadequate services, with people like British Gas having to apologise after thousands of customers complained their boilers weren't fixed for weeks over Christmas and the New Year. So is the sector broken? And would re-nationalisation fix it? And it's been another busy week in the world of the royals. Tomorrow, the Queen will mark 70 years on the British throne, a milestone never reached by any of her predecessors over the last 1,000 years. And as you know, Prince Harry has just popped his head above the parapet again, giving advice to employers on workers' well-being. Although I'm not sure he's done a day's work in his life, but we'll discuss it and all of that with our royal commentator, Richard Fitzwilliams. Tell me what you think on everything we're discussing. You can email gbviews@gbnews.uk or tweet me at gbnews. Right, let's get started. Welcome again to my panel, Conservative commentator Calvin Robinson and comedian Leo Kurth. Well, nice to see you guys. Nice to see you. I missed you last week.
Oh, it's good to be back.
We had a good show without you, that was all right.
No one told me there was a blue colour theme today, though.
Well, no, you look very dapper, I must say. I like the tweed and the polo neck. It's quite... You're going to be extremely warm in here.
Yes. Nana does have the studio a lot warmer than everyone else, I must say.
I have no control of the aircon at all. Leo, it's good to see you as well.
Thanks, it's good to see you, Nana.
I've seen you knocking about on social media.
Yeah, I actually caught Nana. I was in the dressing room next to her and she was telling the sound guy to turn my mic down because I'm loud.
I said Leo's a bit shouty, so can you turn his mic down?
Please tell Leo to stop shouting.
So even though
I'm from Scotland!
Even though he will appear like he's shouting, he'll sound like a little child, which I think is quite good, really. So, Calvin, I'm going to start with you because, obviously, with you being a Conservative commentator, I want to sort of touch on this, first of all, because the first thing I really mentioned was Carrie Johnson. Because there's been rumours in the press, people saying that she is the one who's been, wearing the trousers in all of this, and seems to me slightly misogynistic, really, in a sense that when, Boris has maybe been caught in this way, that she's sort of now being blamed. But what do you think?
I wouldn't say it's misogynistic.
Well, it is a bit if he's sort of denouncing...
Assuming that she has all power and control, that's quite the opposite of misogyny.
Well, I don't think so, no.
But I would suggest that part of it is true. Boris Johnson is a fantastic campaigner. He's good at winning elections. He's not so good at governing. He's not so good at the nitty-gritty, day-to-day detail of government. And we've seen that all across his history in politics. So he aligns himself with clever people. Dominic Cummings was another fantastic mind. I didn't agree with him on a lot of things, but he was smart at what he did. Now that he's gone, the closest person to Boris Johnson is Carrie Johnson. And, Dominic Cummings said this all along. He said, I don't think I'll last very long after the election. I reckon Carrie will take over. And this is what's happened. And she is the Miss Antoinette of the situation.
So you're believing the words of Dominic Cummings? Interesting.
I believe the words of Dominic Cummings and many other people around Boris Johnson. Lord Ashcroft is writing a book on Carrie Johnson at the moment, and a lot of this correlates with that. And we could just look at the agendas, look at what's happening. Boris has moved away from his libertarian background and is focused a lot on this net zero nonsense that I don't think the vast majority of the British public care about. In fact, they're probably against it because it would mean they have to pay more in their energy bills.
Well, I mean, look, you have to look at Boris's background as well. But, I mean, his father Stanley is an environmentalist in a sense, and he's come from quite an environmental and animal-loving, friendly background, and he's also got lots of children in the family. There's lots of children there. So I actually think that it is a lot of it probably coming and aligning with his own values. And also, when I say misogynistic, by that I mean that this sort of sponges him of any kind of responsibility, because now it's her fault that he's behaving like that. It's all down to her, which, in a sense, means that the man absorbs himself with all responsibility. Leo.
So it's like when your mate starts seeing a new girlfriend, and all of a sudden she's dressing him, and he turns up wearing,
a dress.
turns up wearing, nice, not a dress, but but nice shirts and stuff instead of his Sports Direct clobber. So that kind of thing. I think Carrie there's an element of truth in what Calvin says about her being the Marie Antoinette. I mean, certainly the redecorating of the prime ministerial flats with all the wallpaper, and this wallpaper there's like £740.
Well, that was nonsense, wasn't it?
Some of them that was ridiculous. And obviously Boris he's a man. He doesn't know the difference. Get down home base and get some that's £5.99.
No, I think that's a bit of it. There's some men who have excellent taste when it comes.
Yeah, but
to
I don't think Boris is one of them. He's not Jean-Paul Gaultier. Yeah, it looked ridiculous. It looked like something out of Willy Wonka's chocolate factory.
But ultimately, he is a man. He's in charge of his own destiny. So to then sort of put it all on Carrie and say, well. But for people to say that she's got this amazing influence that he couldn't really turn away from, he has got power. He has got power to say no.
But the one thing we know about Boris, one of the things we know about Boris is he likes being liked, and he's definitely going to want his wife to like him. So he's going to do whatever he can to appease her. I mean, he's proven himself to be a bit spineless and a bit of a flip-flopper and willing to lie and do whatever he can to be liked, which works in some situations. It certainly helps when you're getting elected, because you can tell people exactly what they want to hear.
But what difference is that with most men? If a man falls in love with a woman, usually that man will be very heavily influenced by that woman. Yeah, and what makes people think that...
completely corroborating what we've said.
But what I'm saying, though, is then, however, the man is still must take responsibility for the decisions that he makes, because of his influences.
Well, of course he should.
Therefore, really, this does feel a little bit like, well, it's her fault. He's done all that, and it's almost it does start to come across that they're trying to find a way out of this one. Which I mean, I would rather Boris stayed, if I'm honest. Anyway,
the biggest issue here
that's where I am.
Isn't if he should stay or not. Is if this is a democratic process or not. The mainstream media have been lambasting him for weeks on end now. They clearly want him to go, as does the Remain camp, as do people who wanted harder restrictions and more restrictions over Christmas. There are a lot of people who want him gone, and it's not up to them. This is a democracy. We voted for his government. We voted for the Conservative government that he led. Therefore, it's up to the people to decide whether he should go or not.
Well, with that, I agree 100%, and I am actually a bit sick and tired of watching this awful bashing of one individual, and I actually think this would be a big toll on someone's mental health. I mean, we'll be talking about mental health in the media a little bit later.
I think we're allowed to criticise government ministers and the Prime Minister.
No, you're allowed to, but
without worrying about if it's going to have some sort of Prince Harry type.
No, I think there is a limit to the way this is going on, because this is a complete constant attack, and we know already that he has enemies like Dominic Cummings, who has literally confirmed that he wants to obliterate Boris in every respect. So I think we have to take that into account. That's slightly unacceptable in my eyes.
I mean, you can't. I mean, he created Dominic Cummings as an enemy, and Carrie.
It's Dominic Cummings who is the enemy, and he created himself. Nobody, it's not Boris making Dominic Cummings that way.
But now Dominic Cummings is the thorn in Boris's side, leaking all these... I think he's behind a lot of the leaks about the parties.
Absolutely.
He's driving this agenda. So, yeah, he's like a spurned lover. And also he looks like RoboCop when he takes his helmet off.
Does he? I've seen RoboCop. I've never seen him take his hat off, though. I'll be honest, I haven't seen. So what about the potential contenders, then? Because you've got... so, first of all, if they do depose of Boris, which I'm not happy with that, because as a democratic vote, he was voted in democratically. He did get an 80-seat majority. No, I'm uncomfortable with the fact that...
He was voted in. Yeah, we don't have a presidency.
No, but what I'm saying is
he leads the party, and the party they've got their own processes to depose the leader.
Yeah, I know, but for me personally, as one of the reasons why people voted for the party was specifically because of Boris. So I'm not comfortable with them having that process, even if that is their process, because I think in this situation the people should have a say. But anyway, the options are Rishi Sunak. This is what the people are saying. What do you take?
He's too young. I think when he gets out of his teenage years, I think then he could be a serious contender. But at the moment, I don't want a Prime Minister who's flying kites.
Is he flying kites?
He's the guy's like, look at him. He's like 16 years old. He's still doing his GCSEs. We can't have a Prime Minister like that.
He's considerably cleverer than you or I suspect.
Rishi Sunak would never ever get my support. I call him socialist Sunak. I think he's tried to spend his way out of a pandemic. The furlough scheme was basically a test run for universal basic income, and now he's giving people grants, which is addressing the symptom of a problem rather than addressing the problem itself. And giving people back other people's money is never a good approach.
Yeah.
So I don't.
Well, we have to pay it back.
Giving people future money.
Yeah.
and
There are other
just
people
printing
that
money
have
that drives up inflation
Well,
and
that's
basically steals our
so wrong.
savings.
Well, it's interesting you say that because actually I'm just going to bring in the Bank of England, with the guy who is the governor of the Bank of England. You're talking about inflation, and he was actually talking about us saying that we should tighten up our purse strings and we shouldn't be paid more. And I mean, I found that a bit insulting, seeing as he's on over $500,000.
Yeah, yeah.
And
So
also
you're going to go first.
And also the Bank of England created this extra money, which caused a lot of the inflation in any case.
Yeah, no, I think the inflation that we're seeing now is a direct result of all that extra money being printed, and I think it was done with wanton abandon, with no thought of the consequences. And now we're seeing, I guess they were lulled into a false sense of security because we've had so many decades of just constant, nice low inflation and constant growth.
But now, we'll talk more about that.
Are coming home to roost.
But anyway, as you mentioned, it sort of came to mind. But what about so Rishi Sunak? Is that a no?
Definitely.
No.
Definitely not.
Okay. What about Liz Truss?
Liz Truss, amazing.
Well,
yeah.
but even though she got her geography slightly wrong.
Oh, come on, people make mistakes.
I make mistakes, but I'm not the foreign secretary. So I'm not visiting the Russians and the Ukrainians and discussing.
Well, we don't know where Putin's going to redraw the borders, so Ukraine could be a Baltic state by the end of next week.
Well, it has to border the Baltic.
So he could just bulldoze through whatever's between Ukraine.
Yeah, but it isn't now, so that's the point, isn't it?
But people make mistakes. I don't think a little, tiny little mistake like that is a career-ending.
It's not a career ender, but that does show a little level of naivety that, I mean, even I make mistakes. No, but not in front of all the Russians and the people that you're trying to impress to try and have a conversation.
I think you've got to look at. I mean, you criticised her Brexit trade deals. I thought she did amazing.
No, I think she's done well.
All these countries to the table and getting these trade deals pushed through and signed and in place, ready for Britain to do business with the world. And really, that sort of thumbed Britain's nose at Europe slightly. So look, we can do it.
No, I think you've misunderstood. I just said that many have said that those trade deals leave us worse off, but I'm not complaining. I said at least she's done stuff. So what do you think, Liz Truss?
She was wrong on Brexit, but she has done really good on the trade deals as a result. She was a Lib Dem. She tends to be quite liberal. I do like her. I'm not against her. I like her as a person. I'm not sure I like her as a leader yet. I think she's got some time to go. She's been reinventing herself and trying to make herself more populist or more right-wing, a bit more like Maggie Thatcher, which I would support.
So yes or no for Liz?
I think we need someone who's not a globalist. We need someone who's a conservative.
So very, very briefly, Tom Tugendhat, yes or no?
No.
I like that he stuck his head above the parapet and said, I want to be leader. I support that. I like that idea.
But we don't know anything about him.
Rather than, I don't know about him. He is a bit of a conservative.
But is he yes or no?
I don't know. I'm not supporting anyone yet.
So
with Liz Truss, wouldn't it be amazing if the Tories had the third female leader and Labour had none?
If she's any good, but otherwise I don't really care whether. I don't care whether she's a man or. She's amazing. Just listen to you. God, you don't even know her. Right. Listen, if you just joined us, welcome on board. It's coming up to 22 minutes after 4 o'clock. This is GB News on TV, online and on digital radio. Those are the voices of Leo Kearse and Calvin Robertson. I'm Nana Akua, and after the break, it's time for our Great British Debate this hour. I'm asking, should we renationalise the energy sector? British Gas has apologised after thousands of customers complained their boilers weren't fixed for weeks over Christmas and New Year. Shell also announced record profits this week, and as consumers were facing bills of around about £700 extra this year. So is the sector broken, and would renationalisation actually fix it? Send us your thoughts. GB News, GBviews at gbnews.uk. Tell me what you think, and also tweet us at GB News. There's a poll up right now asking, should we renationalise the energy sector? Cast your vote now. Let's get some weather.
Looking ahead to this evening's weather, and the UK's looking cloudy, wet and windy for many, with some wintry showers across Scotland. Let's take a look at the details. In the southwest, it should be mostly dry this evening, but it's going to turn increasingly cloudy, and 1 or 2 showers are possible before the rain arrives later. By 7 p.m, the rain will be starting to reach North London, drier further south, though rain will spread across most parts through the evening. A very wet and windy end to the day across Wales. The hills and mountains are likely to see some significant amounts of rainfall. Cloudy and wet as well for the Midlands. Outbreaks of rain will become more persistent and perhaps heavy at times. The winds will also be strong here at times. Whilst there may be some lingering clear breaks in the cloud in the northeast, for many it will be cloudy, wet and windy here as the rain spreads across to most parts. Southern Scotland will be cloudy and wet. Further north, there'll be some drier and clear breaks, but also plenty of sleet and snow showers with very strong winds for Shetland. It's also looking cloudy, wet and windy across Northern Ireland. The rain will be persistent and heavy at times, and the strongest winds will be around northern coasts. The cloud and rain will continue southwards overnight, with wintry showers feeding across Scotland into the far north of England. That's how the weather's shaping up tonight and to tomorrow morning.
On Mark Dolan tonight, we have a simple plan, which is to inform, stimulate and entertain in equal measure. It's all about getting your opinions on the national television airwaves. I love my viewer emails, mark@gbnews.uk. So do join me from 9 p.m. to midnight every Friday, Saturday and Sunday for big guests, big opinions and a big presenter. 6'5", don't you know? See you then on GB News.
GB News is the UK's home of discussion and debate.
From all perspectives.
To stay up to date on the latest stories,
Make sure that you subscribe to the GB News channel.
Right here on YouTube.
You can watch us live 24/7 across the whole world.
You can also check out exclusive content and catch up on previous episodes of your favourite shows.
Every day, we ask the questions
That you'd ask, so why not add your voice to the conversation in the comments section?
Don't forget to subscribe. We are GB News, Britain's news channel.
Every night at 11 on GB News, we bring you the next day's stories the day before.
Basically like time travel.
If it's a big story, we'll cover it, guaranteed. But we'll also have some fun along the way.
Big opinions, big laughs. Sometimes big hair.
This is
Headliners, the paper review show that won't send you to sleep like the others will.
11 p.m, 7 nights a week. Join us.
Hello there, I'm Eamon Holmes.
And I'm Isabel Webster.
And we hope you can join us for
Breakfast with Eamon.
And Isabel.
You make me laugh out loud, belly laugh.
Is that important first thing in the morning?
Yeah, absolutely.
And there's me trying to be deadly serious. News is a serious business.
Yeah, I have to rein you in sometimes.
Well, it doesn't stop us laughing at it. It doesn't stop us having an opinion on what's going on.
Yeah.
And it certainly will not stop us reflecting what you think.
Weekdays from 6 to 9:30 on GB News.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
It's fast approaching 27 minutes after 4 o'clock. This is GB News on TV, online and on digital radio. I'm Nana Akua. It's time for our Great British Debate this hour, and I'm asking, should we renationalise the energy sector? British Gas has apologised after thousands of customers complained their boilers weren't fixed for weeks over the Christmas and New Year. Now, that's despite them paying an extra £14 per month for breakdown cover. The news comes as Shell posted record profits and energy bills are set to skyrocket almost £700 per household from April. And it begs the question of whether energy companies really have our best interests at heart. So could renationalising the energy sector be the answer? Danielle Boxall is a spokesperson for the Taxpayers Alliance. She's in Westminster. Danielle, thank you so much for joining us. So what do you think of this? Has privatisation of energy not created a profit-first system whereby interests of consumers are basically secondary?
Well, thank you for having me on the show, Nana. And, well, I don't really think that's necessarily the case. I mean, why else would we have seen so many energy companies going bust over the last few months? Because, you know, it seems like that the energy price cap really is at fault here, not the energy companies themselves, because what effectively the government is doing is it's stopping energy companies from being able to invest in the stockpiling and the sort of energy, the sort of creating the energy stockpiles that we need when we see prices go up like this. So, you know, I don't really think it's energy companies' fault necessarily that there's been this massive problem with the energy prices at the moment. I don't think it's because they're making massive profits. I mean, if you take the average energy bill, it's about £2,000 now. Only about £35 of that is actually going to go to profit for the energy companies. You know, that's compared to like £90 in VAT, which is only at 5%, whereas for all other products it's at 20%. So I don't really think it's necessarily that energy companies are making massive profits from this sector.
But the problem with this, obviously, with privatisation is it basically places the risk with government and us taxpayers. So when something does go wrong, we're the ones that the risk is based on. Whereas if we did own it, so if it was nationalised, it means firstly things like, for example, there was the issue with Jersey, where France was saying they want to cut the power off in Jersey. You've got people relying on a pipeline from Russia. I know we don't have much dealings with that, but on a strategic level, would it be wiser for us to actually own these kind of means of production?
Well, there are much more simpler things that we could be doing on a strategic level. I mean, for instance, we decided not to frack. And, you know, places like America, they decided that they would go into fracking. And yet we're importing natural gas from America and we're reliant on energy from Russia when we have massive natural gas reserves under our own land. So we could be using that, but the government has decided that they don't want to do that. So instead of nationalising it and placing loads of taxpayers' money at risk instead of, you know, investors' money, we're placing public money at risk if we do nationalise the energy firms. We could be doing things like allowing fracking to go ahead, and that would make the cost of energy a lot cheaper for consumers at the moment. When people are really struggling with their bills, we don't really want to be piling more risk on taxpayers, you know, when they're struggling with a national insurance increase, council tax going up, and, you know, energy prices, food prices, a lot of pressures on their purses at the moment.
I know you say that about, I mean, well, first of all, the reason why I suspect we're not fracking is because for the 3 times we did it, we ended up with mini earthquakes, didn't we, which wasn't a great thing. I do recall reading about that, so it's probably more of an environmental issue there as well. And I would feel personally quite uncomfortable with it, so I'm quite glad we're not. But when you say about public money at risk, when it goes wrong for these companies, they end up relying on us anyway. So with the bailout for the banks, for example, we ended up pretty much owning RBS. And again, because these prices are so high, the government are now paying to support the people here, and these companies will continue obviously rising prices. And then when the price does come down, they don't often pass the savings back to the consumer. So wouldn't we be better off just actually owning them instead?
No, I don't think that's necessarily the case. I mean, you know, if we got rid of the energy price cap, that would allow a market incentive for companies to compete with each other. So, you know, when you have competition in various sectors, whether that be, you know, food or clothing or anything in the private sector, there's a lot of competition to keep prices low because consumers ultimately want the best deal for themselves. So it's up to the energy companies to sort of compete with each other to make sure that their prices are low. And, you know, if you cast your mind back to, you know, before we had the energy price cap, you'd have these like price comparison websites where, you know, you could change your energy provider within seconds, really. So I think it should be the sort of medium-term strategy of the government to get rid of this price cap, which has effectively hampered out new competition into the market, and it's just allowed the big players to really sort of dominate, especially, you know, over the last few months when we've seen a lot of the smaller companies going bust because of the energy price cap, and they weren't able to compete with these bigger companies that had much bigger reserves and much more investment in them. I think what the best thing to do is get rid of that price cap and allow the market to take control. And I think that will ultimately end up in the best deal for the consumer.
It was interesting because you mentioned the big 6, and of course they control around about 77% of the market, and they've paid out about £23 billion in dividends, which is actually 6 times more than the amount they've actually paid in taxes. So surely this is a system that puts the shareholders' interests over the consumer.
No, I don't think that's necessarily the case. I mean, the shareholders are investing a lot of money into these companies, and if that was taxpayers, I don't think that they would see the same sort of returns in terms of things like, you know, investment in the actual energy infrastructure. So I think if you were to nationalise it, you'd see a lot less sort of benefit for the consumer. I mean, given the fact that we've already seen this happen in the public sector, we've seen lots of councils invest council tax money into energy companies. Some of them even owned them, and quite a number of them have gone bust, and they've actually made losses of over £100 million. So, and that was even before this, you know, recent energy price, the energy crisis that we've seen recently. So, you know, we've seen examples of where the public sector has intervened, and it hasn't worked out very well. So I think if we did this on a bigger scale with government money, I don't think it would be any different.
Well, I mean, I think we've learned quite a bit, though. I don't know whether we'd do it in the same way we did before. But, Danielle, thank you so much for your thoughts. That's Danielle Boxell. She's the spokesperson for the Taxpayers Alliance. And in response to the story about British Gas not fixing some customers' heating and hot water, a spokesperson from the company said, "We've identified where the issues are and we are taking the right steps to fix them. Our customers are the most important thing. We are sorry and trust us that we'll improve." So I'm asking, should we renationalise the energy sector? Let's have a quick look at what you've been saying. Mike says, definitely yes, I'm sick of these private companies making millions. It must come under government control now. George says, nationalisation is insane, no way. Graham says, we need to go further. We should nationalise water as well. Yeah, well, keep those thoughts coming. Interesting stuff. At GB News, why don't tweet us there or email gbviews@gbnews.uk. You're with me, Nana Akua. We're live online, on TV and on digital radio. After the break, we'll discuss in our Great British Debate, should we renationalise the energy sector? And you'll hear the thoughts of my panel, Leo Kirsts and Conservative commentator Calvin Robinson. First, though, let's get your latest news updates.
It's 4:34. I'm Tamsin Roberts in the GB newsroom. Former Schools Minister Nick Gibb has become the latest MP to submit a letter of no confidence in Boris Johnson. He's joined a number of fellow Conservatives calling on the Prime Minister to resign after allegations of lockdown parties at Downing Street. It's reported up to 17 MPs have now submitted letters, but a total of 54 are needed to trigger a vote of no confidence. Social media firms will now be forced to actively remove illegal content without waiting for it to be reported by users. Under the Online Safety Bill, companies are required to remove a range of illegal material, but now several new criminal offences are being added. Culture Secretary Nadine Dorries says the government hopes the bill will bring the full weight of the law against those who use the internet as a weapon. Boris Johnson has spoken with the French president over the tensions on the Ukraine border. Downing Street say the Prime Minister and Emmanuel Macron both agreed a diplomatic solution to the current tensions must remain the overriding priority. The French leader will visit Moscow next week to hold discussions with the Russian President Vladimir Putin. The planned visit comes as China backed the Kremlin's demand that NATO does not allow Ukraine to join the military alliance. In the US, the former Vice President Mike Pence says he could not have changed the result of the 2020 presidential election. It follows renewed claims by Donald Trump that Mr. Pence could have overturned the Democrats' victory and that he should be investigated for failing to prevent Joe Biden taking office. A competition has been launched to find the new home of the railways. The winning town or city, which has to be outside London, will house the new Great British Railways headquarters. Transport Secretary Grant Shapps says it should be somewhere well connected with a great railway history, and the winner will be announced this summer. This is GB News on TV, online and DAB+ radio. Now it's back to Nana.
GB News is the UK's home of discussion and debate
from all perspectives.
To stay up to date on the latest stories,
make sure that you subscribe to the GB News channel
right here on YouTube.
You can watch us live 24/7 across the whole world.
You can also check out exclusive content and catch up on previous episodes of your favourite shows.
Every day, we ask the questions
that you'd ask, so why not add your voice to the conversation in the comments section?
Don't forget to subscribe. We are GB News, Britain's news channel.
Every night at 11 on GB News, we bring you the next day's stories the day before.
It's basically like time travel.
If it's a big story, we'll cover it, guaranteed. But we'll also have some fun along the way.
Big opinions, big laughs. Sometimes big hair.
This is
Headliners, the paper review show that won't send you to sleep like the others will.
11 p.m, 7 nights a week. Join us.
Hello there, I'm Eamon Holmes.
And I'm Isabel Webster.
And we hope you can join us for
Breakfast with Eamon
and Isabel.
You make me laugh out loud, belly laugh.
Is that important first thing in the morning?
Yeah, absolutely.
And there's me trying to be deadly serious. News is a serious business.
Yeah, I have to rein you in sometimes.
Well, it doesn't stop us laughing at it. It doesn't stop us having an opinion on what's going on.
Yeah.
And it certainly will not stop us reflecting what you think.
Weekdays from 6 to 9:30 on GB News.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
If you've just joined us, where have you been? You're missing everything. Stay with us. It's just coming up to 39 minutes after 4 o'clock. I'm Nana Akua. This is GB News on TV, online and on digital radio. So back to our Great British debate this hour. I'm asking, should we renationalise the energy sector? Energy bills are set to skyrocket by nearly £700 per household in April, even though some energy companies are seeing huge profits. Combined with reports of inadequate service to customers, I'm asking, is this sector broken? Privatization of the energy system began in the late 1980s and early 1990s, but is now the time to renationalise it? So let's see what my panel make of that. I'm joined by comedian Leo Kearse and Conservative commentator Calvin Robinson. Leo, we're talking energy.
Yep.
And I'm thinking, you know, this is a sector that seems to be making a lot of money.
Yep.
And we, the consumers, appear to be in a lot of pain. Even if you try and contact them, if you try and do anything, they take ages, they never respond.
Yeah.
And then there's literally no comeback on so many things. Do you think it's time that we started looking at bringing them in-house?
I think the problem, the solution isn't government involvement. The problem is government involvement. So the reason the energy prices are skyrocketing, when we're seeing ridiculous energy bills are going to go up by, on average, £700 in April, which is a huge increase. The reason we're seeing that is pretty much because of government green policy. So they thought we could just have renewables, we could have solar and wind power, which is fine when the sun's shining and the wind's blowing. But when it stops blowing, as happened earlier this in recent months, then you're suddenly dependent on burning fossil fuels. And if you've closed down your own sources of fossil fuels, if you've closed down your nuclear power, then you're dependent on Russia and other people to send you oil and gas. So Russia was suddenly in a position where they could bump up the prices, partly as a sort of geopolitical lever over us. And the government's just left us completely prone and completely at the mercy of overseas powers. We should have invested in our own nuclear. We should have invested in our own oil and gas instead of closing those oil fields. Because the transition to clean energy isn't going to happen overnight, and we can't just, we need to not leave ourselves exposed for when the wind stops blowing. So the government involvement and government regulation has actually been the problem here.
Well, what about things like we have North Sea oil and things like that? They're talking about using that as a sort of bridge towards the actual sort of green revolution that they're talking about. And actually, if we owned these things, surely we could insulate ourselves from all the control of other companies. Say, for example, if you look at things like, let's see, what is nationalised that we really should have kept in-house? Well, I'd say all energy, water, for example.
Yeah, water, I'd agree with that.
Be,
possibly rail travel as well, because it's not a free market. There's only a certain number of tracks. So,
but that's the same with energy in a way, because there are, if we own the means of production ourselves, and I know this is a very sort of Marxist thing to say. I knew you were going to say that, but there are elements of each type of philosophy that are worth implementing to make this work. And I believe on this particular level, because we have a capitalist society, on this particular level, for strategic reasons in particular, we should own these things.
No.
No. Why? Why?
The government is not good at running things. The government is bureaucratic, it's slow, it's painful. It shouldn't run anything because it doesn't run anything well. It's difficult to add anything because Danielle was fantastic. The government should actually listen to the Taxpayers Alliance on this matter. Leo's been spot on with this. We need to cut taxes. We need to get rid of these stupid green policies. The net zero policy, Carrie Antoinette's policy, is what is driving up this £700 per household bill. Normal people can't afford another £700 per year. It's ridiculous. So we should be fracking. Shale oil is on our doorstep. We should be tapping into what we already have in our own lands instead of importing energy. So essentially, we have the answers already. We just need to do it.
Well, if we had those things that we have, which we could actually use, why should we not own it? I hear that you say that the government is not good at owning it and running these things, but we can improve on that. That's if we run it like a business, but yet it's our business.
But it won't be run like a business. It'll be run like the DVLA. It'll be an absolute disaster. If you want to change your address with a DVLA, if I want to change my address with my bank, I just change it online. It's so easy. It takes 10 seconds. If I want to change it with a DVLA, I've got to pay 25 quid for a form, send that form in, they lose the form, my address never gets changed. It's an absolute disaster. It's like being in the Soviet Republic.
Well, I mean, I think that's pretty badly run, and I say this, I'm sort of with you.
Which government-regulated industry is efficient?
Well, give me an industry, and I'll tell you.
Well, I mean, pick any that's government.
Well, no, you give me one.
No.
You've asked the question to give me an industry that is government regulated.
I'm not a list industry to say that wasn't.
Well, give me one.
Give me one that is efficient.
Any local government.
I don't think
any local authority. Which local authority is like incredibly seamless and well-oiled machine?
Okay, and I do admit, but they're still pretty good at getting your money, though, aren't they? Let's be honest.
Yeah, they're good at one thing.
But then they all are.
They
They are all good at taking money off you, actually, to be honest with you. And in particular, these energy companies. My issue with it is mainly the fact that they actually have so much power and control. So if we outsource that power and control, for example, in times of war, in times of, we had the thing where the French were saying they're going to cut off power in Jersey. We've had the Russians, there's a whole thing going on with Russia and Ukraine where their Nord 2 is going along, but this is Europe are now in stranglehold. I don't know how much of it we rely on, but I think it's very little. But my thing is that actually there's certain things that we should own, and I believe that it's things like water, it's things like energy, it's things, I mean, have you seen Total Recall?
But we can...
when they cut off the air to Mars.
Even Sir Keir Starmer at this point is saying, no, we shouldn't own these industries. Yeah. So even the socialists are saying, actually, no, it's not a good idea.
Kwasi Kwarteng was talking about nationalising it in September last year for a period of time. So you may say that.
Though, is he?
Well, you say that, and you're saying that people aren't conservative, but I'm looking at it as from a strategic perspective, not just a financial one, and saying that really and truly, I think that we should own those things.
But the state should own less and less things. The state should have less involvement in everything.
Yeah, for some things, yes, but let's find out actually what our viewers think, because this show is nothing without them, of course. So let's welcome one of our great British voices, and this is your opportunity to be on the show and tell us what you really think about the topics we're discussing. Carol Wright is from Northamptonshire, and she's a grief and wellness coach. Carol, thank you for joining us. Do you think that we should renationalise the energy sector?
I think it's certainly something to consider. I mean, at the end of the day, these people are making billions of pounds. They don't keep up with government changes. They don't keep up with things that are happening to make things green. And so if everybody worked together, maybe that's the way to do it, instead of just renationalising it. But if we had more of a control over it, then, of course, that would help. And at the end of the day, we privatise things in order to make sure that the prices came down. They haven't. They've done the opposite. They've gone way up. So how can we help people? There's going to be lots of people that aren't going to be able to afford these extra. And why should they take a loan? Why should they take a loan to be able to pay their energy bills?
I know, Carol, it makes no sense at all, because it's a good pay it back, haven't you, over 5 years. Carol, thank you so much for joining us, and thank you for your thoughts. That's Carol Wright. She's there in Northamptonshire. Back to my panel then. So that's what Carol says. She's sort of saying that actually, why should people be taking a loan? These companies make a fortune. They are.
But they're not jacking up the prices to make more profit. They're jacking up the prices because the price of energy, the price of oil and gas from Russia has skyrocketed because we've completely left ourselves exposed. We haven't invested in our own oil and gas fields, as Calvin said. In fact, the SNP in Scotland, somebody, a Green politician who's they form a sort of coalition government in Scotland, said that anybody who wanted a job in oil and gas was far right. They see it as a far right position. If you think we should have our own energy resources and not be dependent on overseas interests, I think it's ridiculous. And also, these companies, people say, these companies make so much profit.
Well, they do.
But that's a good thing. That's a
good thing. But if we owned it, we could use that profit to actually.
We do use that money because those dividends.
But to bring the price down for the consumer.
Get paid into pension funds. So if you've got a pension, your money's you're getting.
Yeah, but not not enough of it, frankly. And I think, that's not convinced me at all. I'm listening thinking they do make huge profits, and they could, if we owned them, then those profits
then
will be...
make a huge loss.
Well, then those profits, I don't necessarily subscribe to that. Yes, there was a time when, I have to admit, we didn't run nationalised industries very well, but I don't see why we would go back and run it that way. I think we should go back and look at nationalising these things, but run them like a business for us, the taxpayer, so that it is beneficial for us. Because in all the profits that they're making, we could use that money to help to sop up things like the NHS, to help to sop up social care. I think that we should own these things, and we have no control. In time of war, what do we do then? Seeing as we're relying on other countries for gas and electricity and everything else like that, we're kind of without a paddle, aren't we?
One doesn't solve the other. We need to invest, absolutely, but we need to enable companies to set up here with shale fracking. We need to enable companies to set up here with nuclear, so we're not importing it from other countries. So then when we're no longer tied to them if there is a war, but we don't need the government to run it because the government is inefficient. The government can't run things. We need to cut taxes. We need to cut these green policies. We need to enable more investment in this industry, in this sector. That's all we need to do. It's quite simple.
Well, I think it's relatively simple, but I still think that the taxpayer, all of that, but the taxpayer should own that.
It just blows my mind that all these people are like, oh, the government's terrible. Boris is terrible. The government's corrupt. And then they're like, the solution is more government. More government. It's like, no, the solution is less government.
No, I hear that, but I really still think that in terms of things like energy, that should be something that we should own, and it shouldn't be down to those private companies. And that money, yes, I hear you when we're saying less government, but I think there should be government involvement.
Well, I think the government can steer it. The government can definitely remove its ridiculous push towards net zero and green policy.
Well, that should go. I mean, I'm not a supporter of that at all. That's nonsense.
It's always the case, isn't it? Socialism sounds fantastic in ideal, but it doesn't work out in practice. That's all it comes down to. It might sound nice for us to own these things, but it's the government that's handling them, it's the government that's running them, it's the government that drives them into the ground.
Well, that's what Brexit was all about. So if you're saying that's so bad, then we took back control.
Brexit was not about nationalising.
Well, but Brexit was about us taking control, and that's, in fact, relying on our government to make those decisions rather than being controlled by something in the EU.
It's completely different.
No, I don't think so. I think
it's about taking sovereignty back. It's about taking back control in the sense that we vote for the people who make the decisions for us.
Well, who are the government?
Rather than having no control at all.
Well, who are the government?
It wasn't about the government taking ownership of our industries. That's
but I'm saying it's a similar analogy in the sense that the government will be. Well, I think it is actually, because I'm saying that the government. You're saying less government, but yet we have chosen to have our government run things around it. So I actually think that we should...
Less government, but democratic government. That's the difference between the EU and Great British government.
Fair enough in that respect, but on the other side of things, I absolutely think the government, we should own, as a taxpayer, I don't see why these big companies should be creaming off these profits and actually controlling the market. Well, if there's a war, we're in trouble.
At the moment, the companies aren't creaming off profits. At the moment, the companies are going bust because they can't raise...
Well, the smaller companies are. The big ones are just getting bigger.
The big ones can absorb it, but they're not making...
cartel.
They're not making money off this crisis. They're losing money because we've got to pay so much for oil and gas from Russia. And we're giving this money to Russia to pay for its war against us.
Well, exactly. You're saying from Russia. I 100% agree with you that we should actually be controlling and making our own energy in this country.
Absolutely.
But when we do that, I also think that we, as the taxpayers, should own it as well. So that money, when we do make the profit, comes back to the taxpayer and is used to help fund things like social care and all the other things, rather than people taking dividends, taking huge profits, and then giving everybody else something, and we, the consumer, have to pay out for it.
Well, I disagree.
Well, you're entitled to disagree. And there we disagree respectfully as well, aren't we, lovely? So today I'm asking, should we renationalise the energy sector? And lots of you are getting in touch with your views. David says nationalised industries are loss-making and cost the taxpayer money. Workers can strike every other week because they're being paid out of the public purse. Lawrence says the government should have bought all the suppliers under the public control as they went bust, rather than offering us a loan scheme. I would 100% agree with that. Sam says that if you want ridiculous inefficiency and massive costs to the taxpayer, like every other government-run disaster, then yes, nationalisation is great. Tom says energy should never have been privatised. It's a public necessity and shouldn't be a chance for investors to make profit. And there's a poll up on Twitter right now throughout the show asking, should we renationalise the energy sector? And currently 65% of you say yes, we should. See, you're with me. I agree. I think we should. But keep those thoughts coming. I'd like to hear them. You're with me, Nana Akua. This is GB News on TV, online and on digital radio. Still to come. Tomorrow marks 70 years of Queen Elizabeth on the British throne. We'll be discussing her Platinum Jubilee and all the latest news from the royal household with friend of the show, Richard Fitzwilliams. We'll be back in a moment.
GB News is the UK's home of discussion and debate.
From all perspectives.
To stay up to date on the latest stories,
Make sure that you subscribe to the GB News channel.
Right here on YouTube.
You can watch us live 24/7 across the whole world.
You can also check out exclusive content and catch up on previous episodes of your favourite shows.
Every day, we ask the questions
that you'd ask, so why not add your voice to the conversation in the comments section?
Don't forget to subscribe. We are GB News, Britain's news channel.
Every night at 11 on GB News, we bring you the next day's stories the day before.
Basically like time travel.
If it's a big story, we'll cover it, guaranteed. But we'll also have some fun along the way.
Big opinions, big laughs. Sometimes big hair.
This is
Headliners, the paper review show that won't send you to sleep like the others will.
11 p.m, 7 nights a week. Join us.
Hello there, I'm Eamon Holmes.
And I'm Isabel Webster.
And we hope you can join us for
Breakfast with Eamon.
And Isabel.
You make me laugh out loud, belly laugh.
Is that important first thing in the morning?
Yeah, absolutely.
And there's me trying to be deadly serious. News is a serious business.
Yeah, I have to rein you in sometimes.
Well, it doesn't stop us laughing at it. It doesn't stop us having an opinion on what's going on.
Yeah.
And it certainly will not stop us reflecting what you think.
Weekdays from 6 to 9:30 on GB News.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
Good afternoon. If you just tuned in, welcome on board. It's coming up to 54 minutes after 4 o'clock. This is GB News. I'm Nana Akua. Now, there's always something going on in the royal household, and this week has been no different. And each Saturday, we always like to get a little bit of a rundown. So I'm joined in the studio by royal commentator Richard Fitzwilliams. Richard, thank you so much for joining us. God, there's so much going on. So should we start with a huge day tomorrow, of course. It's the Queen's celebrating her 70 years on the throne.
Oh, this is historic. It's totally unique. And she's had a reception at Sandringham House. She's been staying, believed to be staying at Wood Farm, which is where the Duke of Edinburgh retired to. But she's moved into Sandringham House because this is where she always spends this particular anniversary. It is indeed the anniversary of her accession, and of course something that is absolutely amazing because no other monarch has reigned for 70 years, but it's also, of course, the anniversary of her father's death, George VI, dying at 56, which was a seismic shock for the nation.
Yeah.
And indeed, someone who did so much for this country, particularly during wartime.
So it must be, in a sense, a sort of double-edged sword, because it's a celebration of 70 years, but it must be quite a sad time, in a way, for the Queen, because this is when she then had to become the monarch, step up to the plate, and also her father died.
Absolutely so, and she will also, of course, be thinking, I'm sure, of the 73 years that she spent with Prince Philip, her strength and stay. So two figures who've inspired her tremendously, because her father, of course, was shy and with a stammer, but nonetheless someone who was dedicated to duty, and someone also who was a deeply serious person. And what's fascinating with her relationship with Prince Philip, of course, was that they were such opposite personalities, the Queen being somewhat shy and conservative in some ways, and the Duke being very abrasive and always very dynamic. And it was a combination of those.
Have you met them?
Indeed, I did, and the Queen has a wonderful charm, a dignity, a certain serenity that puts you at your ease. Not at all, I would say, like Olivia Colman in The Crown.
Well, let's move on to somebody who probably won't put you at ease. It's Prince Harry. He's been speaking about mental fitness and inner work, and this is what he had to say.
Any fuel or any steam in the engine just was like, I was burning the candle at both ends, and it was like, boom. That is when you are forced to look inside yourself. because with everything else around you, seemingly you feel as though it's working against you. The only way that you can really combat it, and the only way you can build resilience for the outside world and your entire environment, is the inner work.
He also said that workers should meditate for 45 minutes a day. Richard, what do you make of Harry's comments?
Well, of course, on the issue of mental health, I think there's no doubt that he and Prince William have done some very, very important work. And I think that was the intention he was on with Serena Williams, who regards him as a form of a life coach. It has prompted quite a large number of people to comment that not everybody is able to meditate for 45 minutes every day.
Imagine if you say to your employer, I'm just going to have 45 minutes now to meditate after lunch, which would be almost 2 hours off.
Well, I mean, clearly, this was the inner work day. His chief impact officer of Better Up, and it's in that capacity that he was trying to, I think, be helpful. I don't think also, may I add, he talked about burnout. Well, in fact, the last time he talked about burnout, I tracked this down to when he was on Oprah, but this was the Apple TV, the Me You Can't See series, and he attributed that to the way the royal family tended to use him, and he rather regretted the fact he was talking about a trip to Nepal, particularly in 2016, that he was too easily amenable to what he was asked to do. But at least he's left them out of it on this occasion. And I think when it comes to the mental health, and of course his Invictus Games and that link is very, very important. I think he's done some very, very good work here. So if he feels better through meditating, I hope they can meditate to the extent where he might be tempted to postpone his autobiography due out later.
Well, yeah, you see, this is the thing. He's talking about mental health, but what about the mental health of those when you're affecting people? So, for example, if you do write a book that could have an effect on others, I think you have to also ascertain and understand that other people may be affected by what you're doing in a psychologically disturbing manner. And I think whilst it seems very self-centred, and whilst I appreciate and respect that he's doing those things to help people with mental health, he doesn't seem to be considering the mental health of his own family.
Well, if you look at the effect of the Oprah interview, which at the time I compared to a nuclear weapon being exploded in the courtyard of Buckingham Palace, that is one example that backs up what you say. I mean, there is an aspect of the Sussexes which is completely unpredictable. Let us just hope that the Platinum Jubilee year leads to some positive thinking when it comes to this very unfortunate royal rift.
Well, Richard, it's always a pleasure to talk to you. Thank you so much for that fabulous royal update. That's Richard Fitzwilliams. Our royal roundup. Well, there'll be loads of that, so keep your eyes on things. Tomorrow, of course, it's the Jubilee. You're watching me, Nana Akua. This is GB News. More to come in the next hour. This is GB News on TV, on digital radio and online. And for the next hour, me and my panel will be taking on some of the big topics hitting the headlines right now. This show is all about opinion. It's mine, it's theirs, and of course, it's yours. We'll be debating, discussing, and at times we will disagree, but no one will be cancelled. But before we get started, let's get your latest news headlines.
Good afternoon, it's 5 o'clock. I'm Tamsin Roberts in the GB newsroom. A former minister has become the latest MP to submit a letter of no confidence in Boris Johnson. Nick Gibb, who was schools minister last year, has joined a number of fellow Conservatives calling on the Prime Minister to resign after allegations of lockdown parties at Downing Street. Writing in the Daily Telegraph this morning, Mr Gibb says his constituents are furious about the double standards. It's reported up to 17 MPs have now submitted letters, but a total of 54 are needed to trigger a vote of no confidence. Conservative MP for Thirsk and Malton, Kevin Hollinrake, told GB News the Prime Minister is still popular.
There's a lot of support for Boris Johnson out there. I mean, it's different in Westminster and it's different in the media, of course. I do not think we should have a Prime Minister removed from office in this country because of a media lynch mob. I think we need to go through this process properly. I think we need to see the results of the inquiry and the investigations and make a proper decision from there.
Boris Johnson has spoken with the French president over the tensions on the Ukraine border. Downing Street says the Prime Minister and Emmanuel Macron both agreed a diplomatic solution to the current tensions must remain the overriding priority. The French leader will visit Moscow next week to hold discussions with the Russian President Vladimir Putin. The planned visit comes as China backed the Kremlin's demand that NATO does not allow Ukraine to join the military alliance. Social media firms will now be forced to actively remove illegal content without waiting for it to be reported by users. Under the online safety bill, companies are required to remove a range of illegal material, but now several new criminal offences are being added. Culture Secretary Nadine Dorries says the bill will bring the full weight of the law against those who use the internet as a weapon. In the US, the former Vice President Mike Pence says he could not have changed the results of the 2020 presidential election. It follows renewed claims by Donald Trump that Mr. Pence could have overturned the Democrats' victory. During a speech in Florida, Mr. Pence directly challenged Trump's assertion that he should be investigated for failing to prevent Joe Biden taking office.
President Trump is wrong. I had no right to overturn the election. The presidency belongs to the American people and the American people alone. And frankly, there is no idea more un-American than the notion that any one person could choose the American president.
Meanwhile, the US military says an airport attack in Afghanistan that left 13 American troops and 170 Afghans dead could not have been prevented. The blast happened in the capital Kabul last August as US troops were helping with evacuations in the aftermath of the Taliban's takeover. It was believed to be a complex attack involving an ISIS-K gunman, but the inquiry showed there was only a single bomber. US Army Brigadier General Lance Curtis says security protocols were correctly followed.
Based upon our investigation at the tactical level, this was not preventable, and the leaders on the ground followed the proper measures. And anytime there was an imminent threat warning, they followed the proper procedures.
A new competition has been launched by the government to find the new home of the railways. The winning town or city, which has to be outside London, will house the new Great British Railways headquarters. Transport Secretary Grant Shapps says it should be somewhere well connected with a great railway history, and the winner will be announced this summer. And the Queen has hosted a reception in Sandringham for members of the local community as part of celebrations to mark her Platinum Jubilee. The 95-year-old monarch welcomed guests, including former cookery student Angela Wood, who helped invent the famous dish Coronation Chicken. It was served to guests after the Queen's coronation in 1953. She also cut a sponge cake decorated with the Platinum Jubilee logo. This is GB News. We'll bring you more news as it happens. Now, though, it's back to Nana.
Good afternoon. It's just coming up to 5 minutes after 5 o'clock. I'm Nana Akua. This is GB News on TV, online and on digital radio. Now, for the next hour, me and my panel will be taking on some of the big topics hitting the headlines right now. This show is all about opinion. It's mine, it's theirs, and of course, it's yours. We'll be debating, discussing, and at times we will disagree, but no one will be cancelled. So joining me today is comedian Leo Kearse and Conservative commentator Calvin Robinson. Still to come, my difficult conversation in the next few minutes will be with a hugely inspirational man who was diagnosed with Parkinson's disease at the age of just 39. Now, Parkinson's is a condition which affects the brain and becomes worse over the years, impacting functionality of movement. Charlie Appleyard is a keen sportsman, and he's used his knowledge and passion to support others with the condition. The Great British Debate this hour, the online safety bill has been strengthened with the addition of a number of new criminal offences to force social media firms to act on illegal content more quickly. Culture Secretary Nadine Dorries confirmed offences such as revenge porn, hate crime and sexual exploitation have been added to the list of priority offences and must be removed by platforms under the new rules. It sparked some criticism over concerns it will limit free speech online. So I'm asking, do you think this strengthened online safety bill will make the internet a better place? Let me know your thoughts. You can email gbviews@gbnews.uk or tweet me at gbnews. So let's start this hour with my difficult conversation. Parkinson's is the fastest growing neurological condition in the world. Now, it's thought around about 1 in 500 people are affected by it. It's a condition which affects the brain and becomes worse over the years, impacting functionality of movement. My next guest was diagnosed with Parkinson's at the age of just 39. Now, Charlie Appleyard is a keen sportsperson. He realised the connection between physical exercise and the benefits in slowing down the disease, and he founded Sports Parkinson's and has gone on to support thousands of people through exercise who have the condition. And I'm very delighted to say that Charlie joins me now in the studio. Charlie, thank you so much for joining me. It's really good to see you. So, Charlie, start by telling me about your story. I mean, what happened? I mean, you were only 39. Talk to me about this whole thing.
I was only 39, but I probably got it when I was about 36. But with most people, you don't realise you have the condition, because I had no idea about Parkinson's at all, really. I'd had 2 sons, both 11-pound babies, big units, and I had a bad back and a bad shoulder. So I thought, just thought it was natural, just tiredness and being a young father and everything, and being injured from having these heavy weights around me all the time.
So what were your symptoms then?
Well, looking back on it, I'm having a great time here, by the way, but I look quite miserable, and looking sombre and miserable is one of the symptoms. Quietening voice, walking, limping around. I've got so many people saying, "Why are you limping around?" But I had a bad back. And then I went on a golf tour to Spain and collapsed in a bunker, and I just could hardly move. And came back to the UK, went to the GP. GP said, "You're obviously stressed, have some Valium." Great time Valium for 3 weeks, but after that I had to go and see a shoulder doctor in Harley Street, and the shoulder doctor told me I had Parkinson's.
Really?
He wrote on his notes, and I was like, I saw it on the notes, and I was like, what's all that about? And he said, you've got young onset Parkinson's disease.
And how did he know? Did he do some blood tests, or how do they know?
There's 40 symptoms which you wouldn't know about unless you're involved in the Parkinson's world, as it were. And there's so many ranging, and he just listed off so many, and I was like, yep.
So some of those symptoms would have been what?
Slow moving, minor shaking. I don't shake too much, but minor shaking. Quiet voice, looking miserable. Just lots of things like that.
You don't look that miserable. I think you look all right, actually. you look good. I mean, it's a really tough thing to go through. And what was your reaction when you heard that?
Well, I was glad that I actually found out what it was, but I knew something was wrong with me. It was getting worse and worse and worse over time, and it wasn't getting any better. So I actually had a friend, Dave Clark, who's the TV presenter on Sky Sports until recently, and he lived on the same road as me. I went out for a drink with him, and I said that very night, and I said to him, I've got Parkinson's. He said, yeah, I know you've had it for 2 years, but it wasn't my place to tell you.
Really? So he was aware?
He knew, yeah.
Yeah, he could tell that.
Yeah, and you can spot a Parky from 50 yards now.
Is it? Yeah. Wow. So how has that changed your life? Obviously, this is a huge thing to be told, and that must have really. I mean, you must have been in shock for some time.
That was a difficult conversation. Yeah.
That would have been very hard.
Yeah.
And then obviously you would have to tell. You've got 2 children.
2 children, yeah.
And so you have to go back and tell your partner.
Mum, family, a lot of my friends. But you know what it's like. A lot of my friends are like, well, we knew something was wrong. We're glad we know what it is now.
Yeah.
But I'm a very positive person.
Of course.
And it was really, really bad news, but I've turned it into lots of good stuff. Stuff I would never do normally. I'm doing now.
Yeah.
And really, really having a great life.
And what about in terms of the lockdown? Because that must have been quite tough. Because I know your philosophy is that actually, if you exercise, you can slow this thing down a little bit.
Yeah.
That must have been tough.
Yeah. So if you do it's clinically proven, if you do 2.5 hours of exercise a week, vigorous exercise a week, you can slow down the progression of the disease, and it does make you obviously feel better within yourself. Lots of people with Parkinson's become quite reclusive and quite introvert, and have lots of apathy and don't want to get out and live the life. And what we did, we went to the European Football Championships nearly 3 years ago, and that created a bit of a community around sport and exercise. So we founded a company called Sport Parkinson's, which we create we create events for people with Parkinson's to come together, share ideas, share experiences, share the world of Parkinson's, because it's quite a unique illness. And off the back of that, we've raised thousands of pounds for charity. And in the lockdown, we had a stream of everyday online exercise classes for people to go to, and which people have really taken advantage of.
Yeah. I mean, again, it's a devastating diagnosis. You are definitely doing everything in your power to slow it down in a sense. And in terms of the drugs and the treatments that they could offer you, how is that going, and what kind of things did they? What kind of things do you have to take?
Well, the main drug you take is Cinemet, which levodopa, which was discovered in 1967. It's a really great drug. I couldn't live without it, but it just makes you feel normal instead of curative. So the motto of Sports Parkinson's is keep healthy and strong till the cure comes along. So the treatments are on the horizon. They're not around the corner at the moment, but we're just trying to make sure we're doing enough exercise. So when it does come time for the treatments, which is coming in this year, we'll be healthy enough to gain advantage of being able to become better in ourselves. But I'm an ambassador of the Cure Parkinson's, who have got a linked clinical trials program which repurposes drugs in the market for the conditions. And there's 2 drugs that have been tested this year which we're working on. One's called exenatide, which is a diabetes drug, and one's called Ambroxol, a trial I'm going on, which is for a cough medicine drug, and they're showing curative properties for Parkinson's. Maybe not cure it completely, because obviously they think there's lots of different strains of Parkinson's, like other illnesses. But the Ambroxol trial in particular is for a genetic mutation, the GBA gene, GBA mutation, which I actually have, which is really, really exciting that I might be on a curative trial in the 3rd quarter of this year.
That'd be awesome, wouldn't it? And if it
amazing, yeah.
Because as you said, the drugs that you're using, the main drug hasn't been changed since the 60s, which means that they simply haven't been investing in finding a cure. And we know how good they can be when they put all their money behind it. For example, the vaccine rollout. I mean, finding a vaccine. If they could just throw the money into Parkinson's.
We at the Cure Parkinson's, we think with £40 million we can cure Parkinson's. That's what we're trying to do with the development board I work on, to try and there's 30 drugs in 30 drugs they've identified across the spectrum to find a cure. So it's only you're right, it's not that much, £40 million.
And before your diagnosis, what were you doing? I mean, what were you working as, and what kind? And are you still working?
Yeah, I'm still working. I own a recruitment agency in the City of London, in Germany and America.
Oh wow!
Which I've run with two co-founders. Which we've got 110 people working for us now. And then I've got I'm a director of Morecambe Football Club, my hometown football club. I'm a director of Sport Parkinson's, football coach, golf, 2 kids. Try to be a good father and parent at the same time. I'm pretty busy.
Pretty busy. And you mentioned Sports Parkinson's as well. Tell us a little bit more about that, because I know obviously you're passionate about things like golf, and you know there's an event.
We try to make sure everyone can keep healthy and strong till the cure comes along. So whether people are playing sport still to a high level, people who've given up sport and has taken up sport again. If you look on our website at sportparkinsons.org, you can first look at the stories. And then there's lots of people who haven't tried sport before. But we put these events on. So there's the thing on there called the triathlon, where at Worcester Warriors Stadium, where there's 20 different sports and pastimes for people to learn and try and pick up, to try and clock up those hours and miles on the clock with regard to exercise.
And your family, how are they coping? Because obviously, when you get a diagnosis like this doesn't just impact you; it's those around you as well. I mean, you've got a wife and kids. That you said
they've been fantastic. My wife, especially, very, very. You know, she's a rock of the family, and is an amazing lady. All my family and friends, I'm very open about it. Lots of people don't talk about it and don't tell anyone that they've got it. But I was very much more. I want to be positive, try and make a positive impact, and everyone knows. Like I was a football coach, and this morning my drugs stopped working, so I'm going to sit in a chair on the sideline for 10 minutes. But everyone knows what's going on, so it's a lot easier to live with. When you try and hide it, I find it's quite it makes it worse.
And you've had a lot of support, not only from your family, but you've had some celebrities getting involved as well.
Yeah, there's been.
Who's been your main sort of allies there?
Mike Tyndall's my main ally. He's been fantastic, and his dad's got Parkinson's, but there's so many. There's Natalie Pinkham, Di Doherty, Brian McFadden and Keith Duffy, Rory Lawson, Gavin Hastings, loads of people. Really, the community is really, really strong, and we just try to be really positive and try and make a positive impact on people's lives. And hopefully, when these trials come on board, we'll say, quick plug, we do need 400 people to come on this trial for Ambroxol. Right. So we need people with Parkinson's. We need people to really come to the fore to try and get this on the market. It's a phase 3 trial. So just the last trial before it goes to market.
Wow.
And it's really, really hopeful treatment.
Well, fingers crossed, because that would be incredible if they actually manage to find something that will stop this thing and at least help and give some respite to those who have it. I mean, I wish you all the best with it. And if people want to find out more, because I know it's a charity, isn't it, that you have, that they can get in touch?
Sport Parkinson's is sportsparkinsons.org, about all the events. We've got running five really amazing events this year, people to join in. And Cure Parkinson's is cureparkinsons.org.
And what would you say to anybody because people are being diagnosed with this thing daily, and it must be, as you've been through this devastating diagnosis, you're turning it around, and I'm so hopeful for you. What would you say to them if somebody's just been newly diagnosed with this condition?
It is terrible. It's really, really bad news, but it's not the end. You know, you can do lots of positive things. The community is really strong. There's some amazing people doing amazing things all the time. My life, it sounds bad, but in so many ways my life's got better because of Parkinson's. So I don't mean that in a crass way. I really do mean it, and we're here to support each other.
Well, it's been such a privilege talking to you. Thank you so much for joining me, and I wish you all the best.
Thank you.
And good luck on that trial. I want them to find a cure for this.
Thank you.
It's lovely to talk to you. That's, of course, Charlie Appleyard. He's an ambassador for Cure Parkinson's. If you've just joined in, welcome aboard. This is GB News. I'm Nana Akua. Coming up is the Great British Debate this hour. We're going to be talking about online safety, and do you think that the strengthened online safety bill will make the internet a better place? Culture Secretary Nadine Dorries has announced a number of new criminal offences to force social media firms to act on illegal content more quickly. Revenge porn, hate crime and sexual exploitation are just some of the changes that have been added to the proposed online safety bill. So I'm asking, do you think that the strengthened bill will make the internet a better place? Before we do that, though, let's get your latest update with the weather.
Looking ahead to this evening's weather, and the UK's looking cloudy, wet and windy for many, with some wintry showers across Scotland. Let's take a look at the details. In the southwest, it should be mostly dry this evening, but it's going to turn increasingly cloudy, and 1 or 2 showers are possible before the rain arrives later. By 7 p.m, the rain will be starting to reach North London, drier further south, though rain will spread across most parts through the evening. A very wet and windy end to the day across Wales. The hills and mountains are likely to see some significant amounts of rainfall. Cloudy and wet as well for the Midlands. Outbreaks of rain will become more persistent and perhaps heavy at times. The winds will also be strong here at times. Whilst there may be some lingering clear breaks in the cloud in the northeast, for many it will be cloudy, wet and windy here as the rain spreads across to most parts. Southern Scotland will be cloudy and wet. Further north, there'll be some drier and clear breaks, but also plenty of sleet and snow showers with very strong winds for Shetland. It's also looking cloudy, wet and windy across Northern Ireland. The rain will be persistent and heavy at times, and the strongest winds will be around northern coasts. The cloud and rain will continue southwards overnight, with wintry showers feeding across Scotland into the far north of England. That's how the weather's shaping up tonight and to tomorrow morning.
Join me, Mark White, here on GB News. For more than 2 decades, I've been at the sharp end of reporting crime and security at home and abroad. From the scourge of terrorism to the fight against violent crime and the deepening small boats crisis in the Channel, they're issues you rightly care about, and so do I. As GB News Home and Security Editor, my focus will be on the stories that matter to you.
GB News is the UK's home of discussion and debate
from all perspectives.
To stay up to date on the latest stories,
make sure that you subscribe to the GB News channel
right here on YouTube.
You can watch us live 24/7 across the whole world.
You can also check out exclusive content and catch up on previous episodes of your favourite shows.
Every day, we ask the questions
that you'd ask, so why not add your voice to the conversation in the comments section?
Don't forget to subscribe. We are GB News, Britain's news channel.
Every night at 11 on GB News, we bring you the next day's stories the day before.
It's basically like time travel.
If it's a big story, we'll cover it, guaranteed. But we'll also have some fun along the way.
Big opinions, big laughs. Sometimes big hair.
This is
Headliners, the paper review show that won't send you to sleep like the others will.
11 p.m, 7 nights a week. Join us.
Hello there, I'm Eamon Holmes.
And I'm Isabel Webster.
And we hope you can join us for
Breakfast with Eamon.
And Isabel.
You make me laugh out loud, belly laugh.
Is that important first thing in the morning?
Yeah, absolutely.
And there's me trying to be deadly serious. News is a serious business.
Yeah, I have to rein you in sometimes.
Well, it doesn't stop us laughing at it. It doesn't stop us having an opinion on what's going on.
Yeah.
And it certainly will not stop us reflecting what you think.
Weekdays from 6 to 9:30 on GB News.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
It's coming up to 23 minutes after 5 o'clock. This is GB News on TV, online and on digital radio. I'm Nana Akua. Now, it's time for our Great British Debate this hour. And I'm asking, do you think that the strengthened online safety bill will make the internet a better place? Now, a number of new criminal offences, including revenge porn and hate crimes, have been added to the online safety bill, putting more pressure on social media firms to act on illegal content. Cultural Secretary Nadine Dorries has revealed that the stronger proposals will mean that some campaigners say that it could limit free speech. So I'm asking, do you think the strengthened online safety bill will make the internet better? I'm joined by Victoria Hewson. She's the head of regulatory affairs at the Institute for Economic Affairs. So I'm going to start by asking whether you're actually in favour of this, of Nadine Dorries' proposals.
No, sadly not.
Why is it sadly? You're saying no sadly?
Because I think these proposals are going to have really bad unintended consequences for, not just for free speech actually, but for the digital economy as a whole. It will, far from...
So like what then? So it'll have these consequences. What are these consequences?
Well, so for example, the cost of implementing these...
So it's money first?
Well, no, that's very much my secondary concern, actually. My primary concern is that what the bill will do is it will mandate social media platforms to surveil and filter and censor users' content.
Well, is that so bad? I mean, OK, they're talking about specific content, aren't they? They're not talking about...
Right, but how do you find the specific content without surveilling all the content? And by the way, this includes your private messages, this includes your WhatsApp messages, your messages on Facebook Messenger. The government wants the internet platforms to read what's in all of those messages, and if they think some of them might be harmful in some rather vague and open-ended sense, to censor and delete them and potentially report you to the police for a hate crime.
But there are levels of this, right? So they've been very specific about the content. Those social media platforms can actually get hold of the information that you put out there in any case. So on your WhatsApp, on all your messages, anything on your phone, if you actually thought that it was... I mean, I know WhatsApp is encrypted and things, but if you actually believed that they couldn't do that, then I think people are misguided. Because as soon as it goes out on a message or on your phone or your iPhone or wherever, that content can be accessed.
Well,
so there's not really...
No, that's a really interesting point, because at present, under the old e-commerce directive, it's actually unlawful for the government to compel internet platforms to monitor content. And this actually reverses that. And it compels platforms to monitor people's content on a huge, vast scale to try and identify and censor out content that the government thinks is either illegal or harmful in really quite open-ended ways.
Well, they've been quite specific, actually. So they're talking about threatening emails. So if somebody sends you a threatening email, they're talking about pylons, which have you ever had a pylon? Anyone do that to you?
I have had some pretty nasty experiences on social media.
So I can tell you. So
I'm not important enough.
Well, see, I didn't think I was either. But then I made a comment, which wasn't, I didn't actually say anything. And I ended up with a pylon. And that is like thousands of people getting in touch with you, sending you hate speech, giving you death threats, and there is no comeback. So when I tried to complain about this individual who created this scenario where there would be that, there was no comeback. There was no way of so for those of us who have been affected by it, we look at this very differently, because I appreciate what you're saying, but you've never had it. You've never had that happen to you. And there will be people who that's happened to. And actually, some people with these sites weaponise their own position, so they may have thousands of followers and they weaponise that against you.
But there is a cost to these measures, which is in order to protect themselves from liability under these new laws, which could entail millions, tens of millions of pounds of fines, criminal action being taken against the directors, the platforms will take a risk-averse, cautious approach in order to protect themselves. So if there is content that is borderline, maybe it's satire, maybe it's robust debate, or maybe it could be deemed to be threatening and harassment. Sometimes it's very, very hard to tell the difference. And the platforms, in order to protect themselves, will come down on the side of censorship. So you will end up in my mind, rather misplaced attempt to sanitise the internet and protect people. You end up really just censoring valid debate.
Well, I hear what you're saying in a sense, but I don't think that that's about censoring valid debate. Valid debate is respectful, and it doesn't end up
Not always.
Well, but that's what I'm saying. So valid debate should be respectful, and if it means that people watch their manners a little bit better, which people will if they know there's a comeback, because the problem, I hear what you're saying, but the problem with free speech, which I respect and I want, but there is a time where free speech limits somebody else's freedom, and at that point it's no longer free speech in my eyes.
Well, I slightly disagree with your latter point, but I think to your former point, my position is that lots of things are undesirable and wrong and quite horrible, but that doesn't mean to say it's the job of the government to intervene and make it a criminal offence.
Well, it'll come down to the companies, won't they? They all have to make sure that they're policing their platforms in a better manner and have a code of conduct, really. And I actually don't think that that's a bad thing, because people do need to learn some manners on the internet.
Well, platforms already do have their community standards and codes of conduct.
Have you ever tried to complain about something?
I have, and actually usually successfully.
Well, we had somebody on who actually had to then, who found a load of complaints, especially when I think it was the World Cup and the players who got the racist abuse, and they sent this content to the media owners and these platforms. They did nothing about it at all. So, and that's the thing.
Well, but these services, though, they are private services, and ultimately, at the end of the day, if you don't like reading the content that is being expressed on social media, you don't have to read it.
So you're saying that, well, but there has to be a standard and a code of conduct. I mean, just because, I don't like, I'm not going to use this at all, that's not valid, really, not in this environment, especially not for what I do on TV and for what many do. Some of us actually need to use social media, but we would like to be treated with respect.
Right, and I'm sure you would, but I'm not sure it's the job of the government to mandate respect and to follow that up with criminal sanctions.
Well,
I think that's the way to authoritarianism.
Well, no, I think the government have a duty of care to ensure that companies don't allow abuse, racism, homophobia, awful posts and, pylons and that behaviour. And those things should become a criminal offence. It's a hate crime if I said it to you. So if I write it, why can I get away
in
with
fact, the law is the same on and offline. This is a big point of misunderstanding that lots of MPs have, actually. There is already, the Law Commission found in 2018, they did a big piece of research on this, and they said very firmly, what's illegal offline is illegal online, and in fact, perhaps almost more stringently so. You cannot say things online that would be unlawful or criminal offences in the offline world.
But people are doing that and getting away with it, and this is a way of
Well, actually, it's almost the reverse. There was just a case just last week where someone was found guilty of a criminal offence for having made a rather off-colour joke about Captain Tom. And, so the idea that this is a wild west where people can say and do whatever they like is just not borne out by the facts.
I'm definitely not with you. I think the government has a duty of care, and this is what this bill is about. It's extending a bill that currently exists, and it's about making sure that the online platforms are held responsible for the content that is on them, and I think that is a good thing.
Well, for sure, and that's a perfectly respectable position that you hold. My position is that I want limited government. I don't want the government intervening and trying to control what people can say to each other and what people are allowed to read, especially when you get into the spheres of misinformation and false material, which very much is often in the eyes of the beholder. And there's often a very fine line between satire and hate, and the way things can be expressed can be very contextual, and it's going to be impossible for automated algorithms, which is what Facebook will have to use, because the volumes of content are so huge. This is not going to be well-qualified individuals sitting here making balanced assessments of content. This will all be done by algorithms and AI, and they are going to get it wrong all the time, but they're only going to get it wrong in one direction in order to protect the platforms.
You see, you and I will agree on that, Leah, because that is a concern. That is a concern. But there needs to be a proper discussion about it. But there also needs to be, I believe, a code of conduct online on social media, and people should not be able to get away with being abusive or creating pylons of people, because that has psychological effects. But it's really good to talk to you.
Thank you.
That's Victoria Houston. She's the head of Regulatory Affairs and Research, and a very, very interesting conversation. Listen, you guys, please join us with your thoughts. Let's have a quick look at what you have been saying. Elliot says, when governments regulate speech, they always look at what they approve of and what they don't. It's all political. That's never good. Steve says, we need this. It's like the Wild West at the moment. Judith says, when you try to control free speech, you're not one of the good guys. Yeah, I hear you. I mean, I do hear you, but there is a dilemma, isn't there? Can we carry on with this whole behaviour on the internet? Something needs to be done. You're with me. This is GBNews online, on TV and on digital radio. Still to come, our Great British Debate. I'm asking, will the online safety bill make the internet a better place? You'll hear the thoughts of my panel, comedian Leo Kearse and Conservative commentator Calvin Robinson. But first, let's get your latest news headlines.
It's 5:32. I'm Tamsin Roberts in the GB newsroom. Former Schools Minister Nick Gibb has become the latest MP to submit a letter of no confidence in Boris Johnson. He's joined a number of fellow Conservatives calling on the Prime Minister to resign after allegations of lockdown parties at Downing Street. It's reported up to 17 MPs have now submitted letters, but a total of 54 are needed to trigger a vote of no confidence. The Duke of York is due to give evidence under oath next month as part of the ongoing civil sex assault case against him. Prince Andrew will face what is known as a deposition in London in what has been described as a neutral location. The Duke strenuously denies all allegations. Boris Johnson has spoken with the French president over the tensions on the Ukraine border. Downing Street say the Prime Minister and Emmanuel Macron both agreed a diplomatic solution to the current tensions must remain the overriding priority. The French leader will visit Moscow next week to hold discussions with the Russian President Vladimir Putin. The planned visit comes as China backed the Kremlin's demand that NATO does not allow Ukraine to join the military alliance. Social media firms will now be forced to actively remove illegal content without waiting for it to be reported by users. Under the online safety bill, companies are required to remove a range of illegal material, but now several new criminal offences are being added. Culture Secretary Nadine Dorries says the government hopes the bill will bring the full weight of the law against those who use the internet as a weapon. A competition has been launched to find the new home of the railways. The winning town or city, which has to be outside London, will house the new Great British Railways headquarters. Transport Secretary Grant Shapps says it should be somewhere well connected and with a great railway history. The winner will be announced this summer. This is GB News on TV, online and DAB. Now it's back to Nana.
GB News is the UK's home of discussion and debate.
From all perspectives.
To stay up to date on the latest stories,
make sure that you subscribe to the GB News channel.
Right here on YouTube.
You can watch us live 24/7 across the whole world.
You can also check out exclusive content and catch up on previous episodes of your favourite shows.
Every day, we ask the questions
that you'd ask, so why not add your voice to the conversation in the comments section?
Don't forget to subscribe. We are GB News, Britain's news channel.
Every night at 11 on GB News, we bring you the next day's stories the day before.
It's basically like time travel.
If it's a big story, we'll cover it, guaranteed. But we'll also have some fun along the way.
Big opinions, big laughs. Sometimes big hair.
This is
Headliners, the paper review show that won't send you to sleep like the others will.
11 p.m, 7 nights a week. Join us.
Hello there, I'm Eamon Holmes.
And I'm Isabel Webster.
And we hope you can join us for
Breakfast with Eamon.
And Isabel.
You make me laugh out loud, belly laugh.
Is that important first thing in the morning?
Yeah, absolutely.
And there's me trying to be deadly serious. News is a serious business.
Yeah, I have to rein you in sometimes.
Well, it doesn't stop us laughing at it. It doesn't stop us having an opinion on what's going on.
Yeah.
And it certainly will not stop us reflecting what you think.
Weekdays from 6 to 9:30 on GB News.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
If you just joined us, welcome on board. I'm Nana Akua. This is GB News online, on digital radio and also on TV. Now, it's back to our Great British Debate this hour. I'm asking, do you think that the strengthened online safety bill will make the internet a better place? Now, proposals now include criminal offences to force social media firms to act on illegal content more quickly. But there's widespread concern that it'll limit free speech online. So I'm asking if the bill will really make the internet a better place. Let's see what my panel make of this. I'm with comedian Leo Kurth and Conservative commentator Calvin Robinson. I've got to start with you, Leo, because you've recently had some activity against you. There's been a bit of a pile on a few things that you've been saying. So what do you think? Do you think that this is a good idea, this bill, the strengthening of it?
I think it could be a good idea. I mean, certainly there's a lot of just the expansion, the rapid expansion of social media platforms. I mean, there's a lot more hate speech and revenge porn and death threats and things like that. It's just made it so much easier. And also, criminal gangs are using social media platforms to arrange like sexual exploitation, grooming and trafficking and things like that. So there's things that need to be dealt with. This bill could deal with them. And having been subject to death threats myself, I think, yeah, generally it's a good idea to slap it. For all that we talk about free speech, nothing stops you speaking freely more than death threats. That's much more effective, much more stifling on conversation than any legislation. So, I mean, there's clearly issues that need to be dealt with. This bill could be, part of the answer. And also another thing I like about it is that social media platforms will be subject to government rules. At the moment, they've got their own rules, which are completely opaque. We don't know how they're applied. We don't understand why our tweets or our posts are being taken down. So they're behind this. They're operating in this black box. And the rules are really capriciously applied. So this would at least provide some clarity and evenness, and we'd know why things were being bad. But, I mean, there's some downsides as well, so I think it could be a danger to comedy, because with comedy, we're not always saying things that are literal face value. A joke is quite often something that's subverting the truth, and we don't mean what we say. We're using irony, nuance, context, or whatever. So, if you read it out at face value in a court, it's going to sound differently. And also there could be mission creep. So it's intended to...
What do you mean by that, mission creep?
So, for example, when the RIPA laws came in, the Regulation of Investigatory Powers Act came in back, a couple of decades ago now. When that came out, it was also dealing with online stuff, and it was going to deal with terrorists and paedophiles. And within about, a few months, it was being used to deal with people who are fly tipping. There
could be other.
These laws can be applied and misapplied.
But the current law exists, and they're strengthening it, Calvin.
This is a terrible, terrible piece of legislation. I agree with every single thing that Victoria said. I think the government should be talking with the IEA on these issues, as well as
the IEA,
the Institute of Economic Affairs, where Victoria's from. What this does, it wants to solve a problem, but it's doing it in the wrong way. So yes, people are horrible online, but you cannot say anything harmful online, because
they're not saying that.
They're saying harmful messaging. And what is a harmful message? What does that mean? It's a very subjective term. What's harmful to you might not be harmful to me. And
but if it's harmful to the person who's received it, then it's harmful. I mean, look,
in what way?
Well, if you send me a message that I deem as harmful, then me feeling it's harmful makes it harmful.
That's the problem.
But that's life. I mean, that's
not life at all.
It is actually on many.
It's not. In real life, if you break the law, you get in trouble.
Well, it's like a hate crime, isn't it?
I might subjectively say, actually, I don't like what you said. You don't get arrested for that.
Well, there's a hate crime, though, isn't it? I might be offended by what you've said.
Yes, indeed.
But that could be a hate crime. So in that respect,
it's your right to be offended. You shouldn't. Yeah,
but I might see that. I might see what you said as a hate crime.
But if that's the case, then we have the thought police. You're no longer allowed to speak. You're no longer allowed to think anything that would cause offence. And it's not about trying to be offensive. It's if you accidentally cause offence.
No, but this is allowing you to have an offence. So it says offensive content with no intent to cause serious distress would not be illegal. So there are elements of it. So they're not saying that you're not allowed to cause offence. You are allowed to cause offence. But what they're saying is if you genuinely didn't mean to cause offence, then that's fair enough. But they're talking about genuinely threatening communications, such as a threat to rape, threat to kill, or cause financial harm, which would become a criminal offence. Now, these things, at the moment, people can say all sorts of things, and there seems to be no regulation of it. Other things, sending communications that are designed to cause harm when the content is taken into account, which can also become an offence as well. So I think that is important.
No, so that's not completely untrue. So anything that's inciting violence is already illegal. Some of the other clauses they put in here, people smuggling, that's already illegal. Fraud, already illegal. The sale of illegal drugs, the key is in the word illegal, it's already illegal. So these things are already crimes. They might not be following through with them, but that's a procedural issue that needs to be addressed. This is just another bill. This is not going to solve the procedural problem.
But they've also put a lot of the onus on the providers. So
that's problematic
and that is important. But it's important.
You already see a lot of bias from these providers at the moment. On TikTok, for example, one of the social media platforms that I don't put any original content on, I only put clips of these shows on there, gets stripped down all the time. I get blocked from TikTok all the time because it's not politically correct. Even if I have two sides of a debate, say, for example, a trans issue, they will say, oh, that could potentially be harmful or offensive to someone. That could be a hate crime, therefore it's stripped off. That is bias, that's prejudice, and that is stifling free speech. This is why all of this is very unhelpful. You cannot regulate or legislate against subjective things like this. It's not helping.
Well, I don't think that some of them are subjective, and some of the things that they're talking about are unacceptable, and people seem to be able to get away with putting these things online. So to strengthen it, I think is a good thing. And in particular, I've been the victim of this nonsense, and I particularly like the fact that they've got the pylon in there as well, which is when somebody who may have a huge following then deems something that they think you've done or said is offensive, even if it wasn't really meant in any way offensive, and then they get all their followers to then pile on and attack you, and there's pretty much nothing you can do about that. And I'm glad to see that's been included. And I think we've evolved. There are new forms of communication, and the law needs to keep up. And so I'm very pleased to see that happening.
The law should not dictate speech. No, that's authoritarian.
No, I'm not saying that. I said that
what you're saying.
No, I've not said that. No, that's not literally what I've said. You said something completely different to what I said.
If someone's saying
but you said that's
in a pylon something that's not nice.
No,
hang on. Nice all the time. We should be allowed to say things that are not nice.
No, you shouldn't. Listen, hang on.
I've also been a victim of pylons. I've been a victim of some big Hollywood stars who've cussed me out and put.
Well, and they shouldn't be allowed to do that.
But they should not be arrested for it.
No, they should not be allowed to do that.
It's outrageous.
It is not outrageous because it's psychological bullying. It's not thought bullying.
You speak. If you don't say the right thing, you are disconnected.
It's not about saying the right thing. If you do something where you know full well that by you doing that will cause a pylon, then you need to be held up.
How do you prove if they knew that it would cause a pylon on?
Well, because clearly there.
Basically, anyone with a large following, they can never quote tweet again.
It depends what they said, and if somebody said something quite offensive or called you something.
But again, it comes down to what does offence mean? Well, I might take offence at something you tweeted. Should you be erased from Twitter?
Listen, I've been very clear about this. I'm very clear about this. If somebody said something that's abusive or offensive, and it's deeply offensive to me and created a pylon towards me, I want that person to have to be accountable for that, and they will know that because they're not stupid. So if you have a following of a huge following, and then you offend or abuse somebody online, and then all your followers then join in, there is no comeback. There is literally no comeback to it.
And abuse, and this is a very illiberal piece of legislation. And what it is, it's actually safetyism. It's actually trying to wrap people up in cotton wool.
I don't think so.
People cannot see anything.
Wrapping people up in cotton wool. This is about threat to rape and
kill. You're offended.
Financial harm.
No, threats to rape are totally different to someone being offended by something that might be slightly.
These are some of the new criminal offences within it.
But no, a lot of these things are already illegal. That's the point that me and Victoria have already come to.
No, this is already.
They're illegal in terms of you've got to go to the police station, make the report. There's a lot of onus on the victim to do that when it should be being dealt with by the platform.
But that comes back to how does the platform operate that? How do they police that? What they do is they come down on the side of caution and block anything that's slightly not politically correct. So none of your jokes will be allowed on Twitter anymore. None of my clips from GBNews will be allowed on social media anymore.
It's not.
Is it already becoming the case, Nana? I'm already banned on these platforms. This is already the case. This is going to make things worse.
You've talked specifically about one platform. I can see that, but I'm not.
So even on Twitter, even
I just don't agree.
Okay, so on Facebook, you weren't allowed to discuss the idea of Wootton coming from a lab in China. That leak was not a conversation we're allowed to have because it was offensive to the Chinese. Now we know that's the most probable likely cause of where the Wootton came from. And now we are allowed to discuss it. But this is the point. They can dictate your speech. That is not
They're already doing that. And I actually
That's not going to be an excuse.
I actually agree. Can I finish? I actually agreed with Victoria on that level, so I don't know why you're even bothering
because
with that
it's absolutely outrageous.
No, but I'm not agree. I actually would agree with you.
We'll reach a point where we won't be allowed to say or do anything online, and what is the point of that?
Well, if you'd allow me to say something, that would be nice. So what I'm saying, actually, is that they are specific about what they are saying that is unacceptable. They've been very specific. If it's genuinely threatening, if it's communication to a threat to rape and kill, which these are new criminal offences, actually, and also, hang on, online and offensive content, which is not deemed to actually be deliberate to try and cause somebody distress, is not deemed as illegal. And I actually think it's about time these platforms became accountable and had to talk about.
Hate is not specific. Harmful messaging is not specific.
I think harmful messaging. For me, it is. For me, if someone creates harmful messaging towards me, I would know specifically that was harmful. Now, this show, as ever, is nothing without your views. So let's welcome on our great British voice. Now, this is your opportunity to be on the show and tell us what you really think about the topics we're discussing. Reverend James Treasure is from Dudley. Reverend, thank you for joining us. Now, do you think that the online safety bill is actually a good idea?
Thank you, Nana. Yeah, I think it's an issue that's been bubbling under the surface for years and years and years, and at least this politician, she's having a go and grasping the issue. Whether she'll be successful or not, we don't know, but at least something's beginning to happen. And I think for me, there's two parts to this that are really important. First, as a vicar, it's the individuals. I have seen so many individuals distressed and in pain and suffering from mental health because of online abuse, because of racism, anti-Semitism, sexism, homophobia. And we really must create a place where those things aren't acceptable and people learn to treat one another with respect. But also there's something about our young people here. You know, back in the day when I was at school, we knew where the bully was. The bully was in the playground. So when you went home, you had a reprieve from the bully. Nowadays, for kids growing up, the bully's in their pocket. The bully's at home in their room when they turn on their PC. And I think for their sake as well, this bill needs to begin to address these sorts of issues. Then I think the second thing is something about the companies here, isn't there? And I understand that they're businesses and they're driven for profit and so on. But almost there's something about these businesses that are now hosts. They're almost in the hospitality sector because they're hosting conversations, they're hosting debate. And like any host, you need some kind of boundaries and some kind of way of talking and relating to one another. And it's almost, I think, morality now has become part of the business world much more. And I think that's what's beginning to emerge and their responsibilities within that.
Absolutely.
All I can think of is that I think we need the wisdom of Solomon in how we proceed with this.
Absolutely. Reverend, thank you so much for joining us. That's Reverend James Treasure. He's there in Dudley. Right, let's have a quick look at what you've been saying today. I've been asking, do you think the strengthened online safety bill will make the internet a better place? And lots of you have a lot of views here. So Olaf says, not allowed to criticise, not allowed to have an opinion, not allowed to oppose. How can you argue? These are good things. Paul says, definitely a good idea. Trolls need to be held accountable. Rick says it will stop anybody speaking against government policy. Apparently, you can now get done for spreading misinformation, which could be classified as anything. Well, actually, that's not quite right. That's not quite where the bill is. It's a good thing. And then this one, Steve says it's a good thing. It's a good thing if it stops people from spreading COVID disinformation, false information can cost lives. What it actually says is that a court would have to prove the poster, the person who posted it knew that it was misinformation. That's what it says.
And also intended to cause harm.
Exactly. So it does look at it that way. Now it's time for our quick fire quiz. Let's have some fun. This is the part of the show where I test my panel on some of the day's other headlines. And I'm with comedian Leo Kearse and Conservative commentator Calvin Robinson. They've each got a buzzer. Leo, your buzzer, please. Calvin, your buzzer. Fabulous. OK, so here we go. Let's go for our first question. Please play along at home. Right, number one is about the former Conservative MP Owen Paterson, who stepped down last year after he was found to have lobbied for a pharmaceutical company. Newly revealed texts between him and former Health Secretary Matt Hancock show the extent of his lobbying. But what name did Hancock give him in the phone contacts? Was it A, OEP, B, Owen Pats, or C, the big O man?
I'll go with C.
That's Calvin. C, the big O man. Let's see if you're correct.
We can have a go.
Oh yeah, Leo wanted to have a go as well. See, I don't know if they're right or wrong, you see. This isn't working for me. The answer is actually B, it's Owen Pats. Right, Leo, do you give people nicknames on your phone contacts? Do you have a
I know you do.
Nickname?
Yeah, you're
What am I?
Big Nanny A-boss.
Is it? No. There's too much to say, it's too long. You can put that there. What about you, Calvin?
No, I just have people's names.
Do you? Maybe if you were ever sort of cheating on a partner, you might change the name to somebody else. Not that I've ever done that before. I wouldn't do that.
You seem to know a lot about it if you haven't ever done it.
Thing. Right, question number 2 then. Last night was the opening ceremony of the Winter Olympics in Beijing. The UK tends to do much better in the Summer Games, but how many medals did Team GB get in the 2018 Winter Olympics in Korea? Nearest guess wins. I'll go then. Go on then, Leo.
8.
8.
12.
Calvin says 12. The answer is actually no, they got 5 in total. Leo, that means you win 1 gold, 4 bronze. Calvin, will you watch the Winter Olympics?
No, and nobody should, because it's in Beijing, China. We need to boycott everything China does at the moment. They are the enemy.
When are you going to get rid of your phone? Leo?
No, I'm not going to watch it because it's boring.
Yeah, it is pretty boring.
That's a much better reason to not watch it than ending slavery.
I used to have this, the Winter Olympics on my Commodore 64. Remember those? I used to play the skiing and everything. I was actually quite good. That was the best one for me. Right, OK, question number 3. How is Jeff Bezos planning to fit his super yacht under a 40-metre-high bridge in Holland? Is it A, the council are going to dismantle it? Is it B, he's going to drive straight through it? Or is it C, he's going to buy it and move it to America? Leo?
He's going to have the bridge dismantled.
Is he going to have the bridge dismantled?
Yeah.
Let's have a look. Yes, it is the correct answer. It's A, the council are going to dismantle the bridge. Opposition growing to the Rotterdam City Council's decision to temporarily remove the top of a bridge, which is a national monument.
That's privilege.
Is to make way for the Amazon founder's huge ship, which is going to come through this summer. Leo, should the council be bending over backwards to accommodate him?
Well, they're not exactly bending over backwards. He's paid, it's $500 million to have this ship made in the Netherlands, and he's paying to have this bridge temporarily dismantled to get it out. I think, next time he should get his next yacht made in Glasgow. Bring back the Glaswegian shipbuilding.
What do you think?
I agree with Leo. I think, why build it in a city where you can't get it out of the docks? It doesn't make any sense. Take it to Glasgow instead.
Maybe you could just push it sideways until it gets past it. Question number 4. True or false? A £109.9 million Euro Millions jackpot has been won by someone here in the UK, but it hasn't been claimed. I've got a ticket. I haven't even looked at the number. It could be me! OK. Sorry.
That's true.
Is it true?
Answer.
Is it true?
The answer's on the screen.
Is it? Well, it is there. Yeah, it's true, isn't it? So I'll give you both a point for that one. But it doesn't make any difference to you, Calvin. You're losing. I don't think you can catch up. Yes, true. A UK player matched all 7 numbers to win the prize. The lottery firm Camelot is urging players to check their tickets to see if they've won. What would you do with the money? Very quickly, Calvin. What would you do with it if you won it?
Oh, I don't know. We could be talking about Canadian truckers fighting for freedom instead of this nonsense.
would you come back to GBNews?
I'll never leave.
OK. What about you, Leo?
I'd get every monument in the Netherlands dismantled.
Very good. Well, you wouldn't have much money left. Right, question 5. According to the study from the University of Kansas, what percentage of men pay entirely for dates? Nearest guess wins. Leo?
I'd say probably 75%. Most of them apart from me.
What do you think?
50%.
50%. 65%. So, Calvin, you win. You are the nearest. According to a study... Are you nearer?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. It's equal, isn't it?
No,
You're
75.
equal.
You have a degree in economics.
65 to 75 is 10. 50 to 65 is 15.
It's in my ear. It's not my fault.
Don't blame Ali.
Don't blame Ali. Producer, he's telling me, and I'm like trying to work it out.
I'll teach him how to count.
I'm better at
after
maths
the
than
show.
you. Right, so 65%, according to the study, 20,000 college students, just under 2/3 of men paid entirely for the dates. Do you pay for a bill on the date, Leo?
It depends if we're going for a walk in the park or if
Do you
we're
pay
going
for the date if you go for a meal?
I do sometimes, yeah.
What about you, Calvin?
Yes, if it's a date, the gentleman pays.
Well, yeah, absolutely. I'm glad you said that. If somebody thinks they're going to take me out on a date and expect me to pay, I don't think so. You'll never see me again. What will happen is I'll be there and then I'll climb through the window. I'll say, bye-bye, see you in a bit. I'm just going to the loo. I'll climb out of that window. You'll never see me again.
You paid for X's entire holiday, didn't you?
No?
You paid for the entire holiday.
Yeah, well, I've learnt my lesson since
I'm a
then.
feminist. I'm a feminist. I insist in gender equality.
That's good for you. Lucky you, eh? I'm afraid for me, I am a feminist, but I still would like people to pay for me on a date because I am woman.
Equal does not mean the same.
Right, so listen, thanks for joining us on today's show. We've been asking, should we renationalise the energy sector? According to the Twitter poll, 66% of you say yes.
Shame.
34% of you say no. I've got to say thank you so much to my panel. Leo Kearse, thank you very much, Leo, and Conservative commentator Calvin Robinson. And also thank you to you for joining me today. I'll see you tomorrow at 4. Take care of yourselves. I'll leave you with the weather.
Looking ahead to this evening's weather, and the UK's looking cloudy, wet and windy for many, with some wintry showers across Scotland. Let's take a look at the details. In the southwest, it should be mostly dry this evening, but it's going to turn increasingly cloudy, and 1 or 2 showers are possible before the rain arrives later. By 7 p.m, the rain will be starting to reach North London, drier further south, though rain will spread across most parts through the evening. A very wet and windy end to the day across Wales. The hills and mountains are likely to see some significant amounts of rainfall. Cloudy and wet as well for the Midlands. Outbreaks of rain will become more persistent and perhaps heavy at times. The winds will also be strong here at times. Whilst there may be some lingering clear breaks in the cloud in the northeast, for many it will be cloudy, wet and windy here as the rain spreads across to most parts. Southern Scotland will be cloudy and wet. Further north, there'll be some drier and clear breaks, but also plenty of sleet and snow showers with very strong winds for Shetland. It's also looking cloudy, wet and windy across Northern Ireland. The rain will be persistent and heavy at times, and the strongest winds will be around northern coasts. The cloud and rain will continue southwards overnight, with wintry showers feeding across Scotland into the far north of England. That's how the weather's shaping up tonight and to tomorrow morning.
Hello there, I'm Eamon Holmes.
And I'm Isabel Webster.
And we hope you can join us for
Breakfast with Eamon.
And Isabel.
You make me laugh out loud, belly laugh.
Is that important first thing in the morning?
Yeah, absolutely.
And there's me trying to be deadly serious. News is a serious business.
Yeah, I have to rein you in sometimes.
Well, it doesn't stop us laughing at it. It doesn't stop us having an opinion on what's going on.
Yeah.
And it certainly will not stop us reflecting what you think.
Weekdays from 6 to 9:30 on GB News.
GB News is the UK's home of discussion and debate.
From all perspectives.
To stay up to date on the latest stories,
Make sure that you subscribe to the GB News channel.
Right here on YouTube.
You can watch us live 24/7 across the whole world.
You can also check out exclusive content and catch up on previous episodes of your favourite shows.
Every day, we ask the questions
that you'd ask, so why not add your voice to the conversation in the comments section?
Don't forget to subscribe. We are GB News, Britain's news channel.
Every night at 11 on GB News, we bring you the next day's stories the day before.
It's basically like time travel.
If it's a big story, we'll cover it, guaranteed. But we'll also have some fun along the way.
Big opinions, big laughs. Sometimes big hair.
This is
Headliners, the paper review show that won't send you to sleep like the others will.
11 p.m, 7 nights a week. Join us.
Hello there, I'm Eamon Holmes.
And I'm Isabel Webster.
And we hope you can join us for
Breakfast with Eamon.
And Isabel.
You make me laugh out loud, belly laugh.
Is that important first